Arizona Athletics gets its new athletic director. How did she get here? What does this mean going forward? All that and more on Locked On Wildcats.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it Locked On Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. This show is brought to you by Gametime. All right, now, Arizona has a new athletic director. Her name is Desiree Reed-Francois. All right, so here's where we're going to, here's basically where we're starting with this, is that as many of you know, I consider Dave Hickey a pretty good buddy of mine, and I think Dave Hickey got screwed in all of this. You look at Arizona basketball, it's in the top 5 in the country. You look at Arizona football, it's in the top 15 in the country. And you look in the athletic department, and yes, it's running the $30 million deficit. Guess what? A lot of other programs are running that kind of stuff as well. Look at ASU. ASU sucks at both sports, and they're running $22 million deficit. I don't know what else to say there other than the fact that that's obviously not ideal. And at least Arizona, though, is good at it. And again, you look at a school like UCLA, similar stuff. I can keep going on and on. I mean, heck, we look at, I believe it's Houston that's running record deficits, but that's neither here nor there. But then you also look at the University of Arizona as a whole, and it's running, it's got a massive budget shortfall. And the one common denominator in all of this is Bobby Robbins. President Robbins is a guy who, listen, he was looking to save his own job. I get all that. So he threw Dave Hickey under the bus. That's essentially what happened. And I don't really think you're going to find anybody that doesn't agree with that sentiment. But I guess that's neither here nor there. Enter Desiree Reed-Francois with an interesting background for sure. Originally from California, Fremont, California. She did her undergrad at UCLA. And then she did her law school degree at the University of Arizona. So she was here in 1997 when Arizona won the national championship. So she knows exactly what, she knows what that means to this city, all of everything that, that goes into it with Arizona basketball. She was here obviously during the high water mark of Lute Olson, which is obviously a big deal. You look at her resume, and she's gone around quite, to quite a few different places. She's definitely worked her way up, from being, assistant athletic director or associate athletic director, whatever the term you want to use, to finally getting that gig then at UNLV. And at UNLV, when it came to basketball, she did a pretty nice job. I mean, you got to be honest here. You bring in TJ Olselberger. He obviously has gone on to Iowa State. They're in the top 10 in the country. Did a pretty darn good job there. And again, UNLV is not an easy place to be successful at. I think that most people do understand that. Then after that, you've got she moved on to Missouri. And Missouri is Missouri, it's obviously in the SEC. There is how do I put this? Missouri is not an easy place to win in. Keep in mind, again, it's in the SEC, and we all know about football and whatnot in the SEC, but did a pretty good job. Now, she didn't hire Eli Drinkwitz, but she certainly extended him, and under her leadership, his coaching, Missouri had one of the 10 best teams in the country this year, and I don't know that that's going to be going anywhere. It seems like it's something that is very sustainable, and not only does it feel like it's something that's very sustainable, it feels like they're on pretty good footing, and she gets a lot of credit for that. Then you look at basketball. Obviously, they're terrible at basketball this year, but last year won a couple games in the NCAA tournament, hired Dennis Gates. It was at a school like Missouri, it's going to always be a little bit difficult because you have, when you lose 5 starters or you lose basically your whole team, when you're at a school that's not a traditional blue blood like a Missouri, then that can be a little bit, stretching. But She did a pretty darn good job at Missouri. And when you look around, you go on the message boards, you go on social media, and you see what people are saying about her, you're not going to find a lot of people that have a lot of qualms about the job that Desiree Reed-Francois did at Missouri. And again, that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. Because generally, if somebody leaves a school, you'll be people will say, "Oh, screw them. We don't, we know that firsthand here at the U of A." But it sounds like talking with most people, they say that she did a pretty good job, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later on. Where she kind of really excels in some areas, and I think what the University of Arizona was looking for, but she's also somebody that certainly has worked her way up to this moment. And I think that that's something that for any athletic director, you can certainly applaud, because she, again, she's somebody who, she wasn't handed anything, whether that was at Tennessee, wherever the case may be. She worked her way up that ladder, and you could tell that that's something she wanted to do. And she's very ambitious, and that's obviously a good thing. You factor in the law degree as well. She knows her way around there. And again, it's a pretty impressive resume. And I think the thing that a lot of people are probably intrigued by too is that she left a school like Missouri. Listen, everybody knows that right now, even though the Big Ten stinks in basketball and has like one or two good teams in football, everybody knows that financially the Big Ten and the SEC are in drastically different pay grades than almost any other school, than any other programs out there. It just kind of is the way it is. And in the SEC, you're looking at something like $70 million payouts each year. And on top of that, when you're at a place like Missouri, she's taking a pay cut to come here to the U of A. And that's something that, I think that people should certainly take into account. She's taking a pay cut to come here. She obviously wants to be here. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the reasons for possibly leaving Missouri, but she's leaving Missouri in pretty good shape. I mean, again, when you're a school without a ton of tradition like Missouri, and you're in the SEC and you finish 10th in the country, that's some pretty good work. Now, again, going to need to keep reminding folks that she did not hire the current coach. I get that, but she did secure the funds to get the extension. And by all accounts, she's very, very good at that. She's very good with donors. She's very good with boosters. And I think that's something that people need to keep in mind, because that obviously was a massive, massive priority for Bobby Robbins, was to be able to get somebody in here who would be very good with boosters, would be very good being able to raise money and being able to cut into the deficit, because that's something that Arizona obviously has a little bit of an issue with. But even in Missouri, again, we talked about it before. You bring in $62 million. You bring in a $62 million donation. That's something that's going to bring a lot of people's attention. And she talked about it at the presser as well, where she said that it was very difficult to go to that donor and say that, I'm going to be moving on here. Really appreciate the donation, but that's obviously something that you got to do. You got to be able to do, you got to do certain things at certain times. And sometimes they're going to be a little bit uneasy, but that is something that certainly, I think, caught a lot of people's eye, was the way that she was able to secure that donation. And that's something that you're going to need to see a little bit more at the University of Arizona. And we're going to talk about that. But first, game time. All right, now, Arizona basketball is rolling right now. It is one of the best teams in the entire country. And not only is it rolling, there is a shortage of tickets to go to these games. Now, we're not like ASU, obviously. People actually go to the University of Arizona basketball games. And if you're going to probably want to step in there and look at Gametime, because if you can't find a ticket to a game, guess what's probably going to be there for you? Gametime. Again, check it out. Download the Gametime app today. Use code Locked On for $20 off. Again, $20 off, my friends. You will thank me later, as always, because this is where it is at. Check it out, Gametime. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now, we talked about that $62 million donation. That is something that is huge. That is something that is very, very big, and I think that really factors into a lot of this. Arizona athletics, as we know, is in a little bit of a budget crunch, a little bit of a budget shortfall, and she did some very good things in Missouri. when she came into Missouri was operating from Missouri was operating at a deficit. And she's got them in a surplus. And and like I said, that's not an easy place to be able to do that. Now, granted, it's going to help being in the SEC. I get all of that, but by all accounts, she did a pretty good job. Like I said, you're not going to really find many people that have many bad words to say about her time there. And that's something that I think that a lot of people need to take into account. Now, some of the other things that I think that we also need to take into account here are what exactly are the top priorities. And the top priorities for her, you can just tell by watching Bobby Robbins for 5 seconds, is raising money. Raising money is going to be huge, and being able to cut into that deficit. He said you either you either grow your way out, you cut your way out, or you get donations. And I think the hope is that there's going to be able to be a little bit of all three combined into there. And I think that's like I said, I think that's a realistic hope. So we'll see if that does come to fruition. But that's going to be your first tour of duty. Now, you got to remember, a lot of people are kind of bummed that Erica Barnes is not going to be the athletic director. I think a lot of people were thinking that Erica Barnes would be the athletic director, and that obviously did not happen. And I think that upset quite a few people. And honestly, I kind of get it, because I think Erica Barnes was led to believe that she was going to really have a seat at the table, that she was going to be seriously considered. And I don't know, in hindsight, if we're looking at it, that she was ever really seriously considered. Again, that's not me. That's not sourced. That's just me. That's just me taking a wild gander. But you do kind of wonder about that to a certain degree. But Erica Barnes was obviously very, very big with all of the boosters, all of the donors. And I think a lot of people reached out to Robbins, being interested in possibly giving more money. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Barnes, because like I said, Barnes was very close with a lot of the bigwigs, but that's also why you're bringing in Reed-Francois. Just a great name, by the way. But Reed-Francois, I think a big part of it is going to be trying to re-energize those donors. Say, here, let me, how can we work together to get to this point? And we'll find out. We'll find out exactly what she's capable of. But that's the background that you want. You wanted somebody that has shown, some fiscal restraint. Now, again, I'm going to stick up for my guy, Dave Hickey again. People always say, keep in mind the COVID pandemic, that affected a lot of things. But people always say, you know what? We want good football. We want good basketball. I don't care what it takes. Back up the Brinks truck is always a familiar phrase. Well, guess what? Arizona's good in basketball and football now. But at the same time, I think that it's a little unfair that Dave Hickey had what happened to him, and I don't buy for a second that President Robbins didn't have an idea of what was going on. As a matter of fact, I would be pretty surprised if he didn't sign off on all of it. So that be that as it may. He's looking at it though, and this is something like in life, you're looking to save your job. That's certainly what Bobby Robbins is looking to do here, and we'll find out. Again, when you've got the fiscal record, she does, and she's also was very, very front and center on NIL as well. With NIL, it can be NIL can be really annoying. I mean, listen, I like NIL. I support kids being able to transfer, being able to leave basically whenever they want. Because again, I always go back to it. If the coach can do it, then I believe that anybody should be able to do it. So I am totally cool with that. But I also think that there needs to be some limitations. But she's also found out a certain way though to be able to make it more attractive. And that's essentially, and she was able to do this in Missouri, that once a kid signs a letter of intent, they're eligible for NIL. They don't have to wait till they get on campus. They don't have to wait till, any of that. Once they're on, once they're here, they're essentially, or once they're signed, they're essentially good to go. It'll be interesting to see if she can promote that here at the University of Arizona, because I think there'd be a lot of people who would be very curious if that is a sustainable way to go about doing it. And honestly, I'm not sure that it's not, but I think that, like I said, she's got a good financial background. Not only does she have a good financial background, she's also got the background where, you know that, she's going to be innovative. Nobody that has talked about her, has talked with her, has ever said that she's not an innovative person. And again, Robbins has continuously said that he needed somebody in here that was able to kind of understand the landscape and modernize the athletic department in the 21st century. And I think that's what he's hoping for with her. Now, I've had a number of people that said she's kind of difficult to work with behind the scenes. We'll find out, whether that's true or not. I don't know. But like I said, I had a number of people tell me that. But a lot of times as well, I'm also going to say that a lot of times successful people are viewed as being difficult to work with behind the scenes because they're successful. They hold people to account. They hold people to a certain standard. We'll find out. This was, I think this was a coup. I don't think that anybody thought that Bobby Robbins would be able to get somebody from the SEC. It also shows you to a certain extent too, just have, I think, some of the disconnect when it comes to Arizona's financial situation. If Arizona was in as rough and tumble a financial situation as I think so many people want it to be, then I think that I don't think that she would have come here. Keep in mind, you're in the SEC, you're making that good money, you're making good, like I said, it's kind of posh money. Why would you come here and take a pay cut? Now, granted, I think some of that was because at least you've, had a number of people say that she did a really good job there. And then they set up some panel at Missouri to essentially oversee what she was doing. And she's kind of like, wait a second, I'm doing a good job here. Why are you setting up a panel to oversee what I'm doing? And I get that. And I think Robbins came to her and said that, listen, we need somebody to be able to, rectify rectify some of the financial issues in the athletic department. And I think it's something she looked at and she jumped at. Keep in mind, Arizona's really well off in football and basketball at this point. Arizona's a top 5 basketball program right now in the country. You just signed Tommy Lloyd. We're going to talk a little bit more about Tommy Lloyd later on in the show, and we're going to really hit on that one on Friday. But Arizona's in a pretty good spot, football as well. And those are the sports that athletic directors make and break their career on. Everybody loves the Olympic sports, certainly care about the Olympic sports, but nobody is ever getting hired and fired because of handling of Olympic sports, unless it's something really bad. When it comes to Olympic sports, it's kind of cool. It's a cherry on top, but nobody really ever looks back and says, that's where it's at, that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The two revenue sports, football and basketball, those are where you base your living, your hard-earned, your all of that. That's where all of that comes down. And not only is that where all of that comes down, it's also I think a point where we can just be honest about it. It's kind of the elephant in the room that you got to be able. Those are the ones that matter. Those are the ones that pay the money so that other schools or the other kids can fly around, at other places. And like Mike Andreas said, they don't want to cut any sports. She doesn't plan on cutting any sports either. So it's up to this athletic department to be good in both of those. Now we're going to talk about Tommy Lloyd here in a second, but first, FanDuel. Check it out. FanDuel.com/locked-on. New customers get $100 or $200 or $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's that simple. It's that easy. You watch, listen, you got basketball going on right now. You got football. Football's over, but you got the NFL draft coming up. By the way, you can bet on the NFL draft. How cool is that? And I think that's just something that is exciting about everything that is connected with FanDuel is that you can bet on the present, you can bet on the future, you can bet on the past. You name it, FanDuel's got it. FanDuel.com/locked-on, my friends. All kinds of good stuff. And again, there's no better time to get in on all of the betting stuff. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now let's talk a little bit about Tommy Lloyd. Tommy Lloyd got an extension. Tommy Lloyd's going to be here through 28-29 at the very least. I was glad this got done. Tommy Lloyd is also going to be paid a lot of money. Tommy Lloyd should have been paid a lot of money because honestly, he deserves it. Made over a little bit over 5 million, he's going to make over a little bit over 5 million per, and that escalates to 6. essentially much of the same contract that Jed Fish was offered and turned down, and then tried to say that he wasn't offered, all of that stuff. But Tommy Lloyd is going to be taken care of, and you got to give a big shout out to boosters, donors for making this one happen. Everybody knows that Arizona basketball, that is what runs this city. It's awesome when Arizona is good at football. We all know that. It's great when Arizona is good at football. But when you're good at basketball, that is really kind of the straw that stirs the Tucson drink. And Tommy Lloyd is perfect for this city. Now, again, Arizona's got to be better in the NCAA tournament. We know that. But this man has pressed all the right buttons since he came in here. And you know what's also cool about Tommy Lloyd? He does it with a smile on his face. He's not a jerk for no reason. You watch him and you can just tell that this is somebody that I think is having a really good, time. And not only is he having a really good time, he can bring in recruits. Not only can he bring in recruits, he knows what he's doing, though. And that's something that I think he's got whether it's through trial and error, whatever the case may be, he's somebody that is maybe it took him a little bit of time to figure out exactly what he wanted from a roster construction, all of that. I get it. But he's also shown that he can take inventory of where he's at and what he needs. I mean, like we talked about before, you look at last year, Arizona didn't have anybody that could create off the bounce. So what does he do? He goes and gets Caleb Love, who's probably about as good as there is at creating off the bounce. Arizona also didn't have many good perimeter defenders. Guess what you did? You went out and got Jaden Bradley. Then up front, Keyshawn Johnson. Arizona was kind of soft up front. Azuolas Tubelis was awesome, but they were kind of soft. Arizona needed to get tougher. He got tougher. So again, you got playmakers, you got toughness, you got all kinds of stuff that you just did not have previously. And again, that is a huge tip of the cap, because a lot of coaches would say, dude, I'm 61-11 in my first 2 years. I am the winningest coach in college basketball history over my first 2 years. Buzz off. I will figure it out. Well, he did say buzz off, I'll figure it out, but he changed things up a little bit. And I think that's also what's exciting about this, is that he was able to change things up. And I think that this team is much, much, much more equipped come March to be able to make a long, sustained tournament run. So again, excited to be able to watch all of that. But as always, this is a great time. Tomorrow we're gonna preview Arizona Washington State. Who would have thought that Arizona Washington State would have been the premier game that was going to essentially decide the conference? But Kyle Smith's done a really good job. I think that you've got to put him as the conference coach of the year at this point. And if he's not, he's certainly, I think he could be the national coach of the year. He's done that good of a job. We're going to break that all down, all of the projections, what everybody sees for that game. But again, I'm also at the point too with Arizona basketball that it's far more to be about what Arizona does than what anybody else does, because I think Arizona, if they play well, they will be able to take care of what they need to take care of. And I think that's what's unique about the University of Arizona's basketball team. It's a little bit like UConn, in that if you're good and you take care of business, you don't really need to worry about who's on the other side, because again, you're pretty much set at that point. And then we're going to, Friday, we're going to hit really hot and heavy into Tommy Lloyd's contract extension, break down all the details of the much-deserved contract extension, and we're going to talk a little bit of football in here as well, because we are a football school as well, as you all know. But on that front, very much appreciate you guys making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Mike Luke. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Bear down and keep back in the A.